What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode, another collab episode you guys have arrived at. It is Sloppy Saturdays. It is Infinite Sports. I am joined here with my main man, Kenny. What's going on, Kenny?
How's it going, everybody? Dommy had some high energy coming into this pod. He was hosting. He's got the hat on. He's ready to go. I'm happy to be here today. Should be a good show.
I've never been more ready for a pod since I've been recording. Today, we are going over the biggest matchups in football on both sides, NFL and college football. Like me and Kenny said, we're diving into both of each other's channels throughout the year when it comes to football. I'm going to be talking more NFL on here. He's going to be talking more college football on his side, even though these will be up on both sides for a collab episode. But yeah, we're going over the biggest games on both sides. Super exciting. The NFL schedule came out last week. This episode was supposed to come out a little bit earlier, but we both had things going on. So now we are going to talk about both college and NFL, like we said, as the NFL schedule came out. I did want to discuss NFL. There is so many different ways we could go. We definitely want you guys to comment your most anticipated NFL game because for NFL, it could have been a list of 30, 40 between Monday night, Thursday night, and Sunday football. So many ways we could have went. We didn't want to have too many repeat teams for the NFL. For college football, it's a little bit more dense where college football, you're really anticipating certain matchups. Now, there are great matchups that we did left out, but like we said, we wanted to keep these lists to 8, 9 for each, so this episode doesn't run way too long because we have a tendency of definitely doing that. But yeah, we're gonna dive in right up with the NFL because NFL, like we said, just came out. We collabed on this list a little bit. Some Kenny had, some I had. We want to talk about the NFL, but before we dive into the NFL, we got to discuss because that first matchup already touches on it. What the NFL is doing, expanding these schedules a little bit. Our first one obviously comes on a Wednesday night. Wednesday night football is pretty new to me. What about you, Kenny?
I mean, it really isn't that new because they've kind of been, sprinkling them in now. And the pandemic really set the blueprint for the future of the NFL. Now, their ability to say, hey, we're going to put games no matter what day it is, it doesn't matter. We don't care what holiday it is, what sport's going to be on, because now they're taking over Christmas too. They're going to do whatever they want because that's what the NFL does. They don't care. They're going to shove whatever game they want in our faces, and they know we're going to watch it.
Now for NFL, like you said, when you're competing with NBA, it was always NBA on Christmas. NFL is the most popular sport in America. They're gonna have the most watchers no matter what's on alongside it. But at the same time, like I feel like what makes the NFL so great, or part of the reason of that, is the anticipation going over to select days, that it's not on every single day. You anticipate the whole Sunday watching that whole entire slate and the Monday nights and the Thursday nights. Now that it's coming on Wednesday, we've seen Fridays. It's just expanding way too much. And I feel like it's just going to keep expanding because we all know it comes down to one thing, and it's money. What I would like for the NFL, I've said it so many different times, if they could get rights to more games on Sundays and you could have more options on the Sunday slate at least, and not just be tuned into the games on your area. That I would like, but I definitely do not want more days in the NFL. But diving right in on Wednesday Night Football, we have Patriots Seahawks Super Bowl rematch. Not always it's the last game you see as your first game in the next season between the same matchups. But I think this Patriots Seahawks is going to have a way different outlook. When we saw on a neutral site in the Super Bowl, the Seahawks had a heavy line. The Seahawks come in at -3.5 for this game. And you see the Seahawks with some departures on defense. I don't even know if the Super Bowl rematch is necessarily going to be the biggest storyline. I have a feeling it's going to be A.J. Brown in the Patriots uniform. We'll see what happens there. It looked like a little more lined up a week ago, but now we see a couple of different teams come in the mix. I saw Jaguars are in the mix. I saw Chiefs are in the mix. So it's not like a for sure, like foregone conclusion that he's going to be in a Patriots uniform. He's definitely going to be traded, but I don't know if it's going to be in a Patriots uniform, even though I do think Patriots are the biggest favorite. So I think that will be the massive headline. Hopefully we get a much better game because I think the Super Bowl, even though, again, Going into the fourth quarter, I thought the game was way closer than we thought. I kind of felt like for viewers that the Patriots just had no shot with how Seattle was able to get into the trenches, pressure Drake May, and the weapons Drake May didn't have in that game, and the offensive line. Hopefully, again, Caleb Lomu week one, but hopefully they could really shore up that offensive line against the Seattle front. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit different of a Seattle front. And at the same time, there's going to be different weapons. You have Romeo Dobbs, like we said, the possibility of A.J. Brown. It's going to be definitely a different look offense. No Stephon Diggs there. Different team. That's why I think this line's a little bit closer. Now, I do think Seattle's going to come away with it because they are at home, and I do think they are going to be the better team in this game in the trenches. But like I said, a little interesting that we have the Super Bowl matchup, the rematch right in week one.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to some of the other matchups we've gotten where you had the opening game be the rematch of the Super Bowl. I think back to 2016 when we had the Panthers and the Broncos kick it off. Trevor Siemian was the starter for the Broncos, obviously, when Peyton Manning retired. That was a pretty good finish to that game. The Panthers missed a potential game-winning field goal at the end there. So with this matchup here, yeah, the Super Bowl was not a very entertaining game. We got to a certain point where we thought a kicker could potentially win Super Bowl MVP, Jason Myers, which would have been a little rough. Ended up being Kenneth Walker, who is no longer there.
That makes this matchup very different too.
Yeah, exactly. And, Charbonnet might not be back. We could see Price being the lead back going into this game. The young running back that the Seahawks selected. We talked about that on the last time we collaborated. More draft talk. So, yeah, with this game, Drake May, you get A.J. Brown, you have a better supporting cast in terms of pass catchers. Patriots just really couldn't get anything going offensively in that game. And a big part of this matchup is going to be the Patriots' ability to protect Drake May. Can they do that? And you also talked about maybe the Super Bowl rematch not necessarily being the storyline of the game if A.J. Brown ends up coming there, but it's also, some storylines off the field with their head coach as well.
I was going to say that.
Don't want to dive into that, but just saying, just wanted to throw that in there as well. Throw that into the mix. And then with Seattle, how is Sam Darnold going to be now in year two with the Seahawks? I mean, again, played great in the postseason, played great in the NFC Championship game, and did enough in the Super Bowl, obviously, to help the Seahawks win. Of course, I mean, obviously we give credit where credit is due, more so to the defense and their ability in that game, getting to Drake May, pressuring him all day, forcing turnovers. And, the defense did take some hits in the offseason a little bit, but I think it's still obviously going to be a strong unit. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to obviously pick the game because we got 4 months before we get to it. But, you get A.J. Brown, protection's better for Drake May. I mean, I think you could see, a different kind of game. I think you'll see a little bit more scoring. But, right now you still favor Seattle, obviously, the reigning Super Bowl champs. They're going to be at home. Crowd's going to be really into it. So, yeah, no, it is going to be interesting, and we'll see how that rematch plays out to start off the season.
Yeah, definitely some different looks in that matchup. Like we said, Seattle had some departures. Obviously, Kenneth Walker being Super Bowl MVP, he's no longer there. Jadarian Price is going to step into his role at least for week one before Charbonnet comes back middle of the season. When you look at the Patriots, there are some new weapons, like we said, could possibly be A.J. Brown. So you're looking at, I feel like for a Super Bowl matchup in week one, you're looking at as different of teams as it could probably possibly be going into it. So that's going to be interesting. Obviously, everybody's going to be tuned in. First game of the season, Super Bowl rematch. Next game we are going into, obviously, as we talk a lot of Giants on these podcasts, we are going over Cowboys-Giants week one, Sunday Night Football. Dallas is -2.5. It is at the Giants. Now, for this matchup, I think the first 2 weeks, the Giants being on prime time against the Cowboys, against the Rams, I think the NFL is saying the Giants are going to be a really good football team this year. Now, the only issue I have with the Giants, again, when you look at new coaching staff coming in, when you look at the offense, it's not really playing too many games together in terms of the starting offense. Obviously, Malik Neighbors went down, Jackson Dart's debut. Scatterboo went down. it didn't feel like it because of, again, how close they were, but pretty early in Jackson Dart. And then Jackson Dart, obviously Jameis Winston coming in the later of the year. And then, like I said, with the whole new coaching staff coming in, I think the Giants are going to be a team that gets better throughout the year. But in their early matchups to play great teams, it's going to be interesting to see how quick they could build chemistry, how quick they have that chemistry in game. I think that's an interesting aspect. We talk about the Cowboys, how much we like what they did in this offseason. They added defense in the middle of the year. They added defense through the draft. They added a defensive player that we think could have been the best defensive player in the draft. They also added an edge in Malachi Lawrence. I think this defense is going to be very sufficient. And then I think with the offense, we have no questions with this offense. When you look at Dak, when you look at the two top receivers in CeeDee Lamb, in George Pickens, two guys that you could argue are top 5 receivers. Now, the only question with Dallas's offense, if George Pickens is going to remain there and play the whole entire season, that's obviously a thing. They are playing hardball. But I think the Cowboys' offense is going to be super explosive, and I think their defense is going to be middle of the pack, which is all they need to really get them through the season. Obviously, it's a division matchup, and it could end up being a big game towards the later part of the season because when you look at the Cowboys, the Giants, along with the Eagles, and even possibly the Commanders, you're looking at 3 playoff teams that could come out of this division. So that's going to be huge. Fortunately for the Giants, they do open up at home. But yeah, I just think for the Giants, it's going to be interesting. And I talk about it a lot with college football with all the moving parts. But I would have loved for the Giants to maybe have some easier opponents in the front end of their schedule because I feel like they're going to get better towards the end as a rising team and as a team with, again, not a lot of chemistry in game. So, again, I do think it's going to be a really good game. I hope the Giants kind of shock everybody the first 2 weeks and end up coming out really good. But it's definitely going to be interesting.
Yeah. So, and you said they are opening up at home, which I understand that, but the Cowboy fans are going to take over that stadium as they always do. And this is a matchup from a couple years ago. The Giants had these expectations, coming off of the playoff win against the Vikings, Daniel Jones' new contract, you brought back Saquon. And I kept saying over and over again going into that game, because it was also a Sunday night game as well, opening night, week 1, that game was going to determine the kind of season that the Giants were going to have, in my opinion. And what ended up happening? The Cowboys won 40-0, and the Giants had an awful year. They went 6-11, just a bad year, and it got worse. So I kind of have similar thoughts to this game, where I do think the Giants are a better team than what they were opening night in 2023. Like, I do believe that. And obviously, John Harbaugh now is the head coach. It's a new era now. And that's another reason why, we're talking about this game too, is this is John Harbaugh's debut now as the head coach of the Giants. And this is going to be the start, again, like I said, of a new era in Giants football. So I don't think it's going to be 40-0. I think this is going to be a competitive game. I'm really looking forward to it. What does concern me going into this game is, the recent news we got with Malik Neighbors. There's kind of no timetable on when he's going to come back because, of the knee injury that he suffered last year. And we, were there for it in person for Dart's debut. And unfortunately that had to happen. And then had another procedure to clean up some stuff in his knee as well. So yeah, there's no timetable on Neighbors coming back. So that is a blow to this team going into this game. But I do think with some of the veteran weapons that the Giants added, and hopefully Cam Scatterbo comes back and he can kind of pick up where he left off, that he also suffered a horrific leg injury himself. But the Giants did lose a lot of juice when he went down. And the Giants did beat, I know the Cowboys kind of took their starters out final game of the regular season last year, but Dak did start that game and the Giants, they did win that game. So, but again, now you're going to have both teams playing at full strength the whole time for the most part, again, besides the injuries I just talked about. So, yeah, this is a big game. This is a game that you can kind of put your stamp on and say, hey, we're here. We're legit for this season. And like you said, Giants open up 2 primetime games against Dallas and then against the Rams the following week. So yeah, the NFL is kind of banking on the Giants being a good team this year, and I think they should be a good team this year with the moves that they've made. And I think the defense is going to be pretty good. We say that every year, but they were horrible against the run last year, so you hope that they nip that. I know they lost Dexter Lawrence, but signed a couple of veterans, and the draft that you had, and again the veteran pass catchers you brought in, Dart going into year two. There's optimism going into this season for the Giants, and then on the Cowboys side, yeah, we've talked about how well they did. Adding at the trade deadline on defense, and the kind of draft that they had. Their defense is average along with their elite offense, and you figure out the George Pickens situation. Dallas is going to be very good. And for me, early on here, got some time obviously before the season starts, but to me, I look at the Cowboys as the favorites in the division. That's kind of how I see it. And could we see a scenario where you have 3 NFC East teams make the playoffs? Sure, you could definitely see that. Washington obviously made the championship game a couple years ago, but not really as high on them. And obviously with how last year went, a complete flip of what the team they were the year before. Yeah, not really high on them going into the season. So, yeah, this is a big game, I think, for the Giants. And, the Cowboys, obviously, Giants, Cowboys, they seem to always open up against each other to start the year, and people are sick of that. I mean, you go over the last decade, I mean, they've played each other within the first couple of weeks, and usually the Giants are on the losing end of that. So, again, hopefully the script flips and the Giants are on the winning end this time with these expectations now, new era, new coach. They also extended Joe Shane, their GM, so take that for what you will. We'll see, but this is a big game to start off the year for both teams because both teams are going to be pretty good for the season. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, like I said, for the Giants, I think for up and coming teams in both sports, you would like a softer beginning of the schedule and expect them to get better towards the end of the season. But I will say something for the Giants in this matchup, in the Rams matchup. It would be great if they take one of them, but they got to be in the game for both of them. For a team like this that's young, like I said, doesn't have too much chemistry together, but has high expectations and high hopes, it could unravel if you start the first 2 games of the season with 2 contenders and don't stay in the game. They got to have good takeaways from these games. Like I said, it would be phenomenal if they were to split in this game. Who knows? Maybe they could go 2-0 in this game and we just get shocked. But you can't get the doors blown off of you in both games and not contend in either game, because I could see that unraveling and then the season just turning into a complete mess. So these early games are crucial, I feel like, for the Giants. It is going to be interesting to see how they come out. Like I said, you said obviously debut of Harbaugh, and just, again, a team with not a lot of chemistry together, but a lot of talent. I think, like you said, the NFL is really banking on this Giants team being a really great team. Now we go into week 3, Sunday, 9:27. We are going Rams, Broncos. Rams are minus 2.5-point favorites at Denver. Denver, super interesting team. We always talk about, we talked about towards the end of last season. Obviously, we don't like to dive into hypotheticals, but you could really argue that the Broncos were the best team in the AFC. The Broncos would have been in the Super Bowl if Bo Nix was healthy. And the Broncos may have possibly put a better matchup and could have possibly won a Super Bowl. Obviously, that was robbed of them. We still don't really know how it was robbed of them because, again, we saw Bo Nix late in that game, and then it just came out of nowhere. We were all shocked. Now you see Rams, Broncos, and you could argue this year, again, there are a lot of contenders in the AFC, where in the NFC, it really comes down to 3 teams. But you could make the argument these are the best teams in either conference. There's a strong possibility. Both are great in the trenches. I think both have really good quarterbacks. Obviously, people still aren't 100% sold on Bo Nix. Obviously, Stafford is a Hall of Famer. It is going to be interesting. With the Rams, I think they kind of put a lot of the Ty Simpson stuff to bed, at least, again, early in the first year and a half. They give this massive extension to Stafford as of yesterday for 2 years, so he's going to be the quarterback there for the next 2 years. I think the Rams are going to be great again. For the Rams, obviously, a couple of things are depending on it. Is Devontae Adams still going to be an impact player? Obviously, we're getting into his last years, whether it's the next year or 2. I love their running game with Kyron and Blake Corum. Obviously, Puka Nacua, a lot of stuff going on there. But hopefully, again, he's ready to go. Hopefully nothing impacts the NFL for him. And then, I think their defense is going to be good. I think the secondary moves they made, we talked about that. that could be the difference with this Rams team now, really winning another Super Bowl. What they were able to do with that secondary. We saw that secondary get torched late in the season, really all throughout the season, but it really came an impact in the NFC Championship game. Now they shore it up with the 2 Chiefs corners. So again, I really like that as well. What this Rams team have been able to do with their late picks, getting all these starters in their front 7, obviously gave them room to add in that secondary. You could argue again, they are the most complete team in all of football. I would definitely, again, have to agree with that. But again, I think the Broncos, what they did was really good as well. Now, I didn't really love what they gave up for Jalen Waddle, but I think it's going to be a great addition for them. I think he definitely diversifies that room along Cortland Sutton. And now you have 2 legit receivers, 2 guys that I kind of think, again, maybe aren't top receivers in the league, but 2 guys that are fringe, really good secondary receivers or back end number 1 receivers that definitely complement each other and brings a little bit more to this offense. Because we saw at times with this great Broncos defense that Bo Nix would really, there's some games where he would just get through those games and they would kind of ride their defense. Now I kind of feel like he has enough on offense. They add another back to that room as well. I think, again, you could definitely see this being a Super Bowl matchup. 2 most complete teams, arguably, in both sides. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. Rams are -2.5 at Broncos, which is a little bit surprising to me. Again, I think a lot of people think the Rams are the best team in the NFL to be a 2-point favorite away with how good the Broncos are, kind of surprising to me. I'm not really going to make a pick on this game. I think it's going to be just a great game, though, between the 2.
Yeah, it's the 2 runner-ups from each conference last year. I mean, obviously, if Bo Nix didn't get hurt, Broncos would have been in the Super Bowl. And who knows what would have happened then. Would have been a much different game than what we saw. But it was just it was a huge blow to the postseason because the postseason had a lot of very good games. And to have what we had in the NFC Championship game was phenomenal, but the AFC Championship game, although it was close, it wasn't what it could have been had Bo Nix played. And again, we probably would have got a better matchup in the Super Bowl had that would have happened. But yeah, you have the 2 runner-ups, reigning MVP Matthew Stafford, Rams on the road, solved some issues this offseason, getting the 2 corners from Kansas City, McDuffie and Watson. So you hope that helps because that was their biggest flaw. I mean, you touched upon it, and really it reared its ugly head in the postseason. The championship game, a couple of stops, and maybe the game would have been different. Also, special teams, too, was an issue for this team last year as well. The muff punt as well was a big play in the game, a key turning point in the NFC Championship game. But, yeah, it's going to be on the road. Broncos are going to be at home. You figure with Bo Nix being healthy, you still have the defense. And like you said, they added Jalen Waddle this offseason, which is going to help. Again, gave up a lot to get him, but you bring him in, improve that receiving core, and diversify that room. And, you still got Cortland Sutton. You got a couple of the other guys there as well. The running game, J.K. Dobbins was pretty good for them last year, although you can't bank on him playing a whole season because he gets hurt a lot. R.J. Harvey, can do things for you, being a pass catcher as well. And like you said, they did add another running back to the room in the draft. So the Broncos got a lot of good things going for them. And right now, it's going to be interesting how the AFC West shapes out. Chargers being healthy. We'll see what happens with Kansas City and Mahomes coming back, what the timetable is for him, because it's not a guarantee he's not going to be back week 1. And obviously the Raiders are ways away. So, yeah, the Broncos are going to be up there. They're a Super Bowl contending team. And, with the Waddle move, that they're trying to go all in for it and get back there, get back to the championship game and try to get the job done this year. And for the Rams, same thing. Adding the 2 corners, like I said, you have a very good defense. You got 2 really talented wide receivers, 2 very talented running backs. Devontae Adams, obviously an older player. I still think he's going to be very good. Although, yes, has he lost a step, of course, and you got to, concerns I have with him, and the leg issues because, he did have a hamstring injury towards the end of last year. So you got to be careful with that and these older receivers. But we saw last year, I mean, once you get down to the red zone, you just throw a fade to him and, he does the rest. So that's going to continue to work. And obviously Puka Nacua is an absolute stud, has some off the field issues that you touched upon a little bit. So we'll keep an eye on that. But when he plays, he's one of the top receivers in the NFL. So, and Stafford did recently sign an extension. So I mean, it looks like he's going to play at least 2 more years. It looks like. So we'll see how that goes. I expect him to have a good year as long as he stays healthy. Like I said, we got good players on defense as well. Sean McVay, one of the best head coaches in the NFL, and Sean Payton as well. Really turned the Broncos around after the little rough stretch they had going. When they brought in Russell Wilson, it just didn't really pan out. But now the Broncos are kind of back to being a really good team again and competing for, trying to compete for a championship. So yeah, no, this is going to be a really good game. You got the Rams' really good offense going up against the Broncos' defense. At the Mile High, it should be a very good game. Looking forward to it, and maybe this is a Super Bowl preview.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on a little bit more on the AFC and the Broncos, and I feel like just like the shift in ideology in this conference, we look like 2-3 years back, and we were like, "Oh, it's going to come down to Mahomes, Allen, Lamar. That's what it's going to come down to." Now you look, I feel like with the Broncos bringing in Jalen Waddle, we talked about the Patriots possibly adding more around Drake May. I think a lot of people want to build around these quarterbacks in their rookie year and build more complete teams to beat some of these top quarterbacks. You could argue best quarterbacks in this generation, but also at the same time, when you look at in recent years, like you saw the Chiefs not make the playoffs. It wasn't because Patrick Mahomes got hurt. They weren't making the playoffs either way with him. And then you look at the Bills. We talk about how many holes they have around their team, and Lamar being in and out as well. And same thing with Joe Burrow. I feel like it used to be like, hey, it's going to come down to these top three quarterbacks. We know that's what it's going to come down to. Now it's like there's way more hope throughout that division for these complete teams. And like I said, I think for the Broncos and I think with the Patriots, they know what they got in their quarterbacks. They believe they have top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. And under their rookie deal, they're trying to give them the most help to build these complete teams. And I think we honestly are to a point now where we may have less questions about a Denver Broncos team with Bo Nix than we have with a Chiefs team with Patrick Mahomes or a Bills team with Josh Allen. It's not a guarantee after last year that the Chiefs are going to be there. And then when you look at the Bills with all their holes, again, it's crazy to say, but I feel like the Broncos are probably the team that I have the most confident that they're going to be there at towards the end of the season as a true contender. Same thing again. I mean, there's a lot of teams in this division. Obviously, you talked about the Chargers. Everybody's going to talk about the Bengals. There's a bunch of different teams in this division. Texans, we saw last year, have one of the best defenses in the last 10 years. So there are a lot of contenders in this division. And I think it's way more open up, and everybody's way more open to the idea that 7 or 8 teams could come out this year. Like looking at this conference now, 7 or 8 teams could come out and make the Super Bowl possibly to represent this conference. Then, like every single year for 3 or 4 years, we were saying it's going to be Mahomes, it's going to be Allen, it's going to be Lamar.
Yeah, I know. I think it's very good because, I mean, as much as we love to see those guys play in big moments, it's good to have that kind of that diversity and that not everything is predictable because during this run with Mahomes, I mean, it was like, yeah, who's going to stop the Chiefs? I mean, the Chiefs, making the AFC Championship game every year in the Mahomes era up until last year, it does kind of wane a little bit, and you want to see different teams get a chance and get their moments to shine. So, and the other thing too is like with the Broncos, like if Bo Nix was healthy, they would have made it to the Super Bowl. I will say though, the Broncos were during the year a frustrating team to watch, particularly on offense, because there would be times where their offense just would go into these low periods. And then when it came to crunch time, then Bo Nix would wake up, the offense would wake up, and they would get things going, and they would do enough to win some of the close games that they had to win. So that is one thing I will say. We'll see if that continues going into this year. But regardless, if they have to win like that, they are going to win a lot of games. It's just we'll see if that kind of that trend continues where the offense is kind of sputtering a bit throughout the game and they kind of wake up at the end because they won some close games against the Raiders and they had to go into overtime to beat the Commanders with Marcus Mariota. So. There's things like that, but still, the Broncos. That doesn't mean I'm saying the Broncos are not going to be a good team, but I'm just saying that is one thing that kind of was frustrating to watch them throughout the year last year in the regular season.
Yeah, I think Bo Nix, like again, he showed his ability to win in a lot of different ways. If they're going to run a defense in the game, they were on defense. But then like you said, there were a ton of games. Again, specifically in that game against Buffalo, there was again, the game against the
Mhm.
Giants where he woke
Yep.
up late. Like,
Mhm.
he does come up and carry his team at points too. So again, you do want to see more consistent play where, again, he's the focal point because of them. They're winning every single game. But at the same time, like we said, this Broncos offense wasn't incredible. Obviously, the offensive line was incredible. But in terms of playmakers, sometimes doesn't match up to these top contenders. I think adding Jalen Waddle definitely will help that a little bit, even though I don't think he's like a number one receiver in the league, but he's a great number two, and I think he's definitely going to add something. Yeah, we'll move on. This is a game that you chose in week 8. We have Bears Seattle at Seattle. Seattle's 4.5-point favorites. We are going to talk about the Bears a little bit. When I was making my list, I definitely went through the Bears schedule and wanted to add a game or two with the Bears. I think the Bears, you could argue, are the most exciting team coming into this year in the NFL. I think Caleb Williams, when you look at his ceiling, I think his ceiling is ridiculous when it comes into NFL. Like, this guy could be a top 3 quarterback for sure. When you look at Caleb Williams, he does stuff that you cannot teach. When we look at the throws he makes in clutch time, like, you can't buy those stones. There are quarterbacks we are still waiting on for 7, 8 years to have the big moments that he's had in his second year. And then when you look at what he doesn't do well, being consistent quarter from quarter to quarter and short intermediate throws, if you have the ability to make these crazy difficult throws in the clutch, you should be able to shore up these down to down throws as well. So that's why I think his upside is ridiculous. And then when you look at the offense around him, when you look at Rome Odunze, Luther Bird, and Colston Loveland, guys that haven't even scratched the surface and on the same timeline as Caleb Williams to grow together, I absolutely love it. And then when you look at along the same timeline with a young coach in Ben Johnson and a defense that's really good. We love the pick of Dylan Thiedemann that they added. I think he's going to be an impact player definitely by week 8. The Bears, depending, again, Caleb Williams, if he's in like MVP talks, this is a team that could most definitely come out of the NFC with how he could grow with his offense. When you look at Seattle, we talked about Seattle again. These teams that were mentioned the second time around, to keep this episode under 2 hours, I'm not going to just keep diving into the same teams we already talked about. But obviously, Seattle, you look at the top of the NFC, won the Super Bowl last year. We talked about how they're a little bit different from this year. But again, they're going to be definitely a top 3 to 5 contender in the NFC without a doubt and could possibly go to Super Bowl again. It's going to be tough. That game is at Seattle, but it's definitely one of the best games on the Bears schedule. And you could look at this game as a pivotal point in the middle of the season, week 8, possibly against your best opponent. Bears come out in this game, we could be talking about the Bears possibly as a team to go to the Super Bowl without a doubt.
Yeah, and we almost saw this matchup last year. Had Caleb Williams not have thrown that pick in overtime, which most of the blame was on DJ Moore because he just stopped running. Don't know what was going on there. And you're not going to really have to worry about DJ Moore anymore because now DJ Moore is now with the Bills. But DJ Moore obviously had made that great play, that touchdown in overtime against the Packers. But yeah, it's going to be all about Luther Burden and Rome Odunze now taking on more pivotal roles in this offense. And you got the nice running back duo as well back there with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai. Showed you something his rookie season. And now Caleb Williams, is he going to continue to ascend in year 3? I mean, I think so. I think we both think that. I mean, like we said, there's obviously some things he's got to improve on, but he made some incredible throws. The one I just mentioned with the DJ Moore throw to beat the Packers in overtime, but obviously in the playoffs too. I mean, the play to Rome Odunze against the Packers in the playoff game on that 4th down play, and then obviously, and it was actually on the other day, the playoff game against the Rams. I mean, on the 4th and 4, and he's scrambling around trying to improvise. And we were watching that game together as well. And he just heaves it up, and Cole Kmet's open in the back of the end zone, which was just, I mean, it was just unbelievable. The plays that this guy makes, and just his playmaking ability, just not just with his arm, but with his legs as well. I mean, he's quite the player. He really is, and I mean, he's definitely going to continue in that upward trajectory, especially with having Ben Johnson as his head coach and what he's able to do with him now. And this is going to be a true test for him. Because I do think had the Bears gotten past the Rams, I think it would have been an ugly game for the Bears just because Seattle's defense was just playing at another level and the Bears defense just wasn't very good last year. So I think Seattle would have had their way with the Bears, and especially with Seattle being at home too. I don't think it would have been as competitive as the matchup that we got with the Rams and Seattle in the championship game. That's just my opinion. But now this is a different year. and we'll see how the Bears respond in this hostile environment against Seattle. I think it could be a very good game. Bears, hopefully their defense is improving to keep it close. But how is Caleb Williams in this offense going to be against that defense in that environment in prime time? We will see. But it's a game that you definitely got to mark because, depending on the kind of season that both these teams are having, this could definitely have a huge impact on playoff seeding in the NFC. But this is a game to, keep your eyes on when we get to it.
Yeah, my house went crazy when Caleb Williams made that throw. And it's fun going over these games right now in the spring as they're, again, so far away. But we will probably be together for like 40% of these games. We're always together for these games. But I do think it's going to be interesting as well for both of our channels. Hopefully we get a couple of good moments while we're on live going over the games as well as the games are going on. That's going to be a different twist for both of us as we haven't really done that in season yet. And we look to definitely cover some of these games, maybe again 20-30% of these games when it works for both of us, but going on live doing these games. But yeah, the Bears, like I said, I do think it possibly be the most exciting team this season, but I think this is going to be a pivotal game middle of the season to really see like where they are at. Now we're going to get into week 10 and two teams that I really want to see where these teams are at. You look at the Chargers and the Ravens. I think there is such a realm of possibility for both these teams. Obviously, this game is on the schedule because you look at the quarterback matchup. You look at two top quarterbacks in football with Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson. But also at the same time, I felt like the way the Chargers played last year, I felt like this team could have been a way better team if they stood healthy. They didn't. Obviously, we knew what their ceiling was going to be after those two tackles got hurt. We know you couldn't make a deep run in the playoffs with that offensive line, even though, again, the game that they did play in was an absolute embarrassment. Then when you look at the Ravens side of things, I feel like the Ravens ceiling was kind of capped at the same time as well. They were kind of rushing Lamar back in a sense. They definitely could have got past the Steelers. Again, everybody goes to that field goal that obviously ended that game. But I don't know what their ceiling would have been like, again, playing all these games without Lamar kind of rushing back. Now you look at these two teams, they're much more healthy now going into the season as of right now. Hopefully that stays. And you're looking at teams that could really be either just teams that make the playoffs or teams that really could legit come out of this conference. That's how talented both of these teams are. So I think it's going to be interesting. For the Ravens, obviously you get a new look with their coaching staff. For the Chargers, you bring in Mike McDaniel as an offensive coordinator. I think that's going to help them. I think Herbert's obviously motivated. He wants to get over the hump in the playoffs, but at the same time, Mike McDaniel's got to be motivated because I think this might be a one-year stop into head coaching if Herbert has his best season this year. So I think, again, between Ravens and the Chargers, I really put this game on because I think by week 10 with this really good matchup, I think it's going to be interesting to see where these teams are at because I could see these teams just being playoff teams. I could see these teams being legit contenders. So I think they're both kind of weirdly in the same spot right now going into the season. Like I said, you look at how they ended the season in the middle of the season, you thought it could have been a lot more. And now you look now with them both healthy, I think it can be a chance for both of them to really be true contenders.
Yeah, and then also you got to look at it that it's a Jesse Minter revenge game as well, going up against the Chargers. You're not going to see a Harbaugh Bowl. That's not happening this time around because we did see that a couple years ago with the two Harbaugh brothers. But yeah, no, these are two teams that got banged up throughout the year. Chargers were able to make the playoffs. I mean, had Lamar Jackson not have gotten hurt, and the Ravens didn't get off to such a slow start, they probably would have been in instead of the Steelers. But that did not happen. So they're looking to turn the tide this time around. I mean, the Chargers stay healthy. If Herbert could get better protection, I mean, we say this every year. I mean, at some point, the Chargers have to do something, and they have to win a playoff game with Justin Herbert because it just can't keep happening the same thing over and over and over again. And look, I mean, it was a very low-scoring game against the Patriots in that playoff game. I mean, both teams could not move the ball, but the Patriots, they did just enough to win that game. And Herbert did what he's been doing, and that's getting sacked all the time because he just can't. He's taking too many hits, and he's getting hurt from it by taking a lot of hits, playing hurt. And it doesn't help when you have two of your offensive tackles go down. So the offensive line could stay healthy, and they dealt with injuries with their running game as well, and the defense is okay, I mean, the Chargers are going to be a good team this year. And then on the Ravens side, it's a new era for them. Lamar Jackson still got some good years left. You made some improvements on the offensive line, which has kind of been a little bit of an issue. Derrick Henry still got running the football, and I think still got some good years left. It doesn't seem like he's slowing down, but again, you kind of take it on a year-to-year basis because of the position that he plays and obviously the age as well. But I think Derrick Henry will still continue to run the football well for them. You added some wide receivers through the draft. The defense, struggled rushing the passer. That's kind of been a problem. So you hope that improves. I mean, I think the Ravens, if they're healthy this year, they're going to be. To me, I look at them as the favorites in the AFC North as of right now. I know the Bengals have improved, and the Steelers obviously are going to hang around 500. But I think right now you still got. I still look at the Ravens as the favorites. And this game,
I thought you were going to say AFC North. Yeah, I agree.
No, yeah, AFC North. No, not the favorites in the AFC. I'm not saying that, but in the AFC North, yes, I do look at them as the favorites, and this could be a pivotal point in the season for both teams. I mean, maybe one of them is kind of looking to get themselves back in the conversation, maybe struggling a little bit of a low period, and this could be a huge game, for both sides. So, we'll see how it goes, but yeah, I think for both of these teams, they're looking to bounce back after again some injuries and obviously playoff performances that you kind of want to throw out the window.
Yeah, I think definitely for the Ravens, there's probably a little bit more questions. And when we look at Lamar, I feel like a lot of people aren't really taking it into consideration. We've had this conversation with our friends. A lot of people just completely disagree with me, but it's all good. Like, I feel like Lamar, when he rushed back last season, he was not the same running the football. So I don't know
Yeah,
necessarily
I do. No, I do agree with that.
with him keep having these injuries, if he's going to be at the height that he once was as an MVP quarterback running the football. If he comes back and he comes back as the same player 100%, again, this team could go as far as possible. But I don't know, with every injury with Lamar, and we talked about how different of a quarterback he is to other quarterbacks, not even traditional quarterbacks, just to other quarterbacks in general. His timeline just probably has to be with his prime a little bit shorter. So I want to see if he's going to come back and be the same player running the football. Because if he's not, I don't see the Ravens going the same length as we think they can. And then also with Derrick Henry, like you said, it's a year-to-year thing. Derrick Henry looked great last year, but again, we see people at his age at that position. It could be completely drastic year-to-year. Derrick Henry's the same player. This team could go very far. If Derrick Henry isn't, it's not going to be the same way. And then and when we were talking about the Chargers a little bit, I think their offense is a little bit improved, but again, it's going to be interesting how this offense is going to be without a legit number one guy. I like the spectacular plays of Quentin Johnson. I thought he got much better last year, even though there was definitely inconsistencies. Ladd McConkey, a little bit disappointed from his rookie year. Still think he's a really good player, getting open in the slot. And then you look at Amar and Hampton, probably the biggest X factor in this offense. Definitely a guy who was injured for majority of his rookie season, but a guy that we have high hopes for. They add Keaton Mitchell, add David Njoku, Charlie Kolar. They definitely have depth on this offense, but I don't know necessarily the offensive line should be good, but if it's going to be enough without a true, real number one guy, we'll see. Definitely questions on both sides, but two teams that I think their ceiling and their floor are like pretty drastic in this matchup, probably more than like anybody else on this list. Now we're going to get into week 12. This is a Thanksgiving matchup, Thanksgiving night. Chiefs, Bills, again, kind of getting off the traditional Thanksgiving teams. Chiefs played in Thanksgiving last year. I do have to say, before we get into this matchup, I feel this matchup for me personally, I think I've expressed this to you over the years, kind of got a little bit stale to me, kind of lost its spark after seeing it so many times. I think maybe the NFL agreed with me. That's why they put it on Thanksgiving, add a little more juice to it. But yeah, when you look at the Chiefs Bills, we discussed earlier in this podcast how the AFC has definitely opened up widely with contenders. It's not just like it's going to be Chiefs Bills at the end like we once thought it was going to be. Both teams have a ton of question marks, in my opinion. When you look at the Bills, I still don't know if they have enough on both sides of the ball to win a Super Bowl. Josh Allen, you could argue, is the best player in the NFL. So along with Mahomes. So, but you could argue that Chiefs kind of revamped their team. I kind of do like the Chiefs on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the secondary is going to be the biggest question. How is Mansour Delaney going to really get into a Trent McDuffie role as a rookie? You could argue with that, but I feel like Spags and the Chiefs, they know how to develop secondary players better than anybody, and they let go of them before they get paid and bring in a young secondary player, and it works every single time. So I kind of believe in that. I think as a receiving core, we question their ability to have a number one after Travis Kelce obviously took a step back. He's still a pretty good tight end in the NFL, but again, nothing really like he used to be. Rashee Rice has a ton of question marks. That came out this week. So with him, that's going to be interesting as well. Then you have Xavier Worthy. I think Kevin Walker is obviously going to be a huge addition. I think Emmett Johnson is going to get in there later in the season. So I do think Kenneth Walker is going to be that spark in his offense. And I say it, like, I think Rashee Rice can be a number one receiver. Maybe not a top end number one in the league, but he could definitely be a number one receiver. It's just how much time are you going to take off, whether it's for injury, outside issues, and still come back in that. I think in total, I think the Chiefs are a better team than the Bills, but it is in Buffalo. I think both teams really have to prove, again, especially by this point, that they are where they're supposed to be and they are at the top of this division still, because I think there's question marks with that.
Yeah, there's definitely it's unusual kind of because we are so, like, you did talk about how the matchup's gotten stale. We're so used to these two teams being in the conversation as the top two teams in the conference, and who's going to be hosting the AFC Championship game. Is this going to be the matchup we got? Because we've seen it, time and time again in the postseason with these two teams, and yeah, this could be maybe. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be, but this could be, a game that looms large in playoff seeding. You do think that if obviously both Josh Allen and Mahomes are healthy, and then the Chiefs kind of bounce back after the rough season last year. But again, we'll have to see how the season plays out up until that point. And I will say, in the big picture, when it comes to Thanksgiving, I think the slate is very good. I think it's the best we've had. With the Bears being improving, being an improving team and looking to continue to grow, going up against the Lions, who, they didn't make the playoffs last year, but they finished over 500. Their offense was still very good. So that could be a good game. And then, the Eagles and the Cowboys, you'll take that as the middle part. And then you got this, for dessert with these two quarterbacks going against each other, and they do draw comparisons. I mean, obviously, Josh Allen needs to win some hardware. I mean, he does have the MVP, but this matchup does draw comparisons to being that Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady matchup that you like to see every year. And I don't say no to this. I do like when these two guys go up against each other, because for the most part it's going to be a good game. That it's going to be a game that goes to the final whistle. And that's really what we've seen over the years for the most part. I mean, and we saw probably one of the greatest playoff games ever in the divisional round in 2021, when they just went back and forth and back and forth. The final score ended up being 43-36 or 43, whatever it was, 42-36. Great game. I don't know if we're going to get that on Thanksgiving, but we're going to get a pretty good game if you have Mahomes and Allen obviously healthy and playing in this matchup. So, but yeah, I mean, again, the AFC is kind of wide open. These two teams, they do have their holes, and Mahomes is not, he's coming back from injury. So, we'll see eventually when he does take the field, if he does take the field week one, or if he has to miss the first couple games, and the Bills still, have their holes. But obviously Josh Allen is going to keep them in games, and the Bills are going to win their fair share of games as well. So I'm looking forward to it. And obviously, the Bills changed coaches. I mean, they kind of promoted from within, obviously. And then, the Chiefs obviously still have Andy Reid still going, and Travis Kelce's going to be back. And, we'll see what the Rashee Rice situation is, and another situation now with him. And, with the improvements in the running game, bringing in Kenneth Walker, you draft a running back, like you said. So kind of a different feel to the running back room, because that's kind of something that the Chiefs have struggled with over the years, is running the football. You want to give Patrick Mahomes a running game so we can benefit from that. And the defense is going to be good. Usually, I know, again, you lost some pieces, but with Spags and with the veterans they got there, Chiefs defense is still going to be a good unit. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be good. I do want to ask you this though. I know we're going to talk about this game, but how do you feel about a game on Thanksgiving Eve? I know I think we kind of touched upon it in the beginning, but how do you
Yeah.
feel about a game on Thanksgiving Eve? Because it's Packers Rams. It should be good, but we don't need it. We don't need it.
Yeah, I didn't throw it on the list because I hate it. Like I just hate the whole idea of it. Um, Kind of ruins Thanksgiving Eve from a going out standpoint. We usually go out during Thanksgiving Eve. I actually like for some reason I'm always working during Thanksgiving Eve. Sometimes it's like weird how it falls on. But now you kind of like eliminate people from going out. We're probably gonna sit in the basement watching the game. So like that kind of ruins it from a social standpoint. But yeah, I just don't like it at all. Like I said, I just don't like the expansion of the schedule. I loved how we stuck to Sunday, Monday, Thursday nights, and like I want that to be pretty much it. Now you see again more towards the end of the season, you see the Saturday, that's college football schedule changes and stuff. I mean, it's just too much. It's just too much. Saturdays,
Yeah.
Fridays, Wednesdays. I told you when my next girlfriend comes around, I'm not going to be able to go on dates because of Tuesday night football. Like it's just too much. It's too much,
Well,
and it like
Tuesday right now is the only day that doesn't have any NFL games. They got
give
to
it
add. They got
give
to
it
add
some
something.
time. Give it some time, buddy. But yeah, it's just too much.
Gonna have
Like
the game
again,
every single day one week. There's gonna
I
be no
think
games on Sunday.
I think the NFL like again, it's always going to be the best sport. Football is always going to be the best sport for us. But at the same time, it is going to lose a little bit of spark if you have it every single day. Like again, if you have a steak dinner once a month, you look forward to that steak dinner. If you have steak and lobster every night, it's not the same. So I don't like it. Again, I like again how we get together on Sundays, Monday, Tuesday. Everybody looks forward to it. And then from another aspect, I'm gonna have to set my fantasy lineup every day, check my lineup every day.
Yeah, I know, like fantasy baseball, exactly. Yeah.
Like, it's just too much.
I mean, because I don't know what week it is, but there's one week where you're gonna have two games. You're gonna have a couple games on Saturday. There's gonna be a game on Friday. There's gonna be a game on Thursday. There's like 8 games on Sunday. Like that's ridiculous. And then you got games on Monday. And don't forget Monday Night Football. They like to do. I don't actually. They might not be doing the double headers anymore, which I think they should eliminate that because, you have NFL game starting at 10 o'clock on a Monday. People on the East Coast are going to bed. They're getting ready for work the next day.
I remember I went to your house at like 10:15 on Monday.
Yeah, we watched the Chargers Raiders game. But now things have changed since then. We can't be doing that, right? We can't be doing that.
Then if you
My dog
started too,
agrees with that, by the way. If you hear barking in the background, it's ridiculous.
then if you started too early, it's like you're starting it before people even get home. If you start at
Yeah,
like 5,
exactly.
I
It's
remember I remember during like COVID, there was times like a game would start at like 5.
Well, yeah, because there was that Wednesday game. It was the Steelers and the Ravens. We were supposed to get it on Thanksgiving, and the Ravens had all these players getting COVID, and we had to have RG3 play against the Steelers on a Wednesday.
And then there's sometimes on the Monday game doubleheaders, there were times too where you would have 2 games. One was at like 8 and one
Yeah,
was at 9, and it's just like overlapping.
yeah. I know. I know.
Honestly, I'd rather the overlapping and like again, like it seems like every sports fan or whatever now has 2 TVs or whatever. I'd rather the overlapping than a game starting at like 10 o'clock.
Yeah, no, I guess, because some of us do have the luxury to, have one game on one screen, one game on the other. But for a lot of people, they can't do that. They're
Then
gonna have
also
to
at the same time, you get 2 games. Sometimes you get one game that's horrible. It gives you options.
Yeah, no, that's
But
true.
like I said, I have no issue, and I eventually want the NFL, like I said, to give more options to viewers on Sundays that maybe don't like the team in their home state, or possibly again the matchup is just really bad. But I'm fine with more options on the days. I
Well,
just
that's
don't
called the
want
Sunday
more
ticket, Tommy.
days.
If you want to watch another game, you're gonna have to you're gonna have to give up an arm and a leg for the Sunday ticket, or
Yeah.
you watch Red Zone.
No,
Those are your
no,
options.
you know how it goes. I illegal stream them, and I get
Well, I
spoiled
don't know
by
if
the
you should be
people
saying
around
that. You
me.
can't be telling people that.
I get spoiled by the people around me, and
Yeah.
horrible. Yeah. Anyway, common stream east and everything. Shout out stream east.
All right. Well, now you just shut down the entire website, so I hope you're happy about that.
Anyway,
You outed them.
we'll go on next. We got week 14. We actually got 2 matchups in week 14. First time with 2 matchups. Wow, we're an hour in, and we're not even close to the college football yet. Okay, we have We have Rams 49ers at 425. I want to throw a Rams 49ers game. I think arguably it's like the most consistent matchup every single year. That's the best matchup. Shanahan McVay, everybody looks forward to coach a matchup even more than the players. 49ers are obviously interested with how they retooled their team a little bit, adding in a Mike Evans. They draft their receiver early in Deshaun Stribling. So that, and then they have Ricky Pearsall as well, who again I thought that was a reach at the time, and I still don't think he really panned out. They're a very interesting team. They made the most of it last year. You could argue Shanahan had the best coaching job in all football last year with all the injuries he had, and to keep them in the mix. And they beat the Eagles as well, that a lot of people weren't expecting. But I do think the 49ers are going to be a really good team. I mean, it's similar with the Rams, but more with the 49ers. It's like they have so many of these players pushing the age on offense. We talked about, obviously, Devontae Adams and Derrick Henry earlier. It's the same thing with Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. Are these guys going to be, again, still having really good years, or are they just going to fall off a cliff? That's going to be an interesting part. Their defense is going to be much improved, obviously, with just being healthy over the year. I think the 49ers, again, you're looking at 49ers, Rams, Seattle as three teams that could definitely come out of that division. Three teams that I really expect to come out of that division, even though it's a tough NFC. I do expect that. And I threw in the later Rams 49ers games because I thought, again, at this point, may have a little more impact in the playoff race. So that's why I chose later. It's at 49ers. It's like a pick 'em line. Both teams are great. I absolutely love Brock Purdy. I've said it time and time again. I think if Brock Purdy's your quarterback, you're more than happy with a Brock Purdy. He is that good. And again, it's in San Francisco. It's going to be interesting to see who wins this division. This division is going to be closer than ever between the Rams, 49ers, and Seattle. And the game this late, a game that we always look forward to, I think is going to be a great game.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We've kind of seen these two coaches kind of go back and forth because, once Shanahan, took over, the 49ers kind of, owned the Rams, and then McVay took over. And, the 49ers had a couple of years where like guys got hurt. Actually, even last year, when Purdy missed some time, the Rams and the Niners, they matched up on that Thursday night, and the Niners beat him in overtime, with Mac Jones. 49ers given the Rams fits over the years. And obviously, the Rams, they knocked them off in the championship game when they went on their Super Bowl run. But yeah, it is always fun when these two teams go up against each other. And yeah, you got some veteran players on both sides that, you're hoping that they continue to produce. I mean, George Kittle obviously, tore his Achilles. So we'll see like when the timetable is for him to come back later in the season. McCaffrey, was healthy the whole year and had a really good year for himself. And, they added some wide receivers both in the draft and free agency. The Niners did. And, defensively, they really got exposed by the Seahawks. I mean, the Seahawks just absolutely destroyed them in all facets in the championship game. I mean, they set the tone with the Rashid Shaheed run back. And then it was the game was over from there. But you're hoping Fred Warner comes back healthy, Nick Bosa comes back healthy. They brought back Dre Greenlaw, who, tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl when they matched up against the Chiefs, but, spent the last season with Denver. So, adding him back, we'll kind of see how the Niners do. I mean, I think they'll definitely be in the mix. And, I haven't really looked at their schedule in depth, but, last year they kind of had, a softer schedule because, they finished in last place the year before. And, they were able to bounce back and make the playoffs, won a playoff game. And Kyle Shanahan, although he didn't win Coach of the Year, I think he should have, just based off of like the injuries that they had to deal with and what they had to overcome, and still winning double-digit games and making the playoffs, winning a playoff game. I mean, the playoff game doesn't factor into it, but still, like, he should have won it, in my opinion, but he didn't. But they'll be a good team. Rams, obviously, I think are still better, and I would put them more in the conversation as Super Bowl contenders than the Niners. Niners are definitely going to be in the mix for the playoffs, but this will be a big game later in the season. Both teams are kind of fighting for playoff seeding, the division. It's always fun when they play against each other, like you said, and both teams are healthy. This is going to be a heck of a game late in the season, and they open up the season against each other in week 1.
Yeah, I think for the 49ers, definitely they're trying to get younger because I think they know this window with some of these old
they have
players
to.
is
Yep.
just at the very end, and they're trying to milk it out, it seems like. And again, like that Mike Evans thing is going to be very interesting. I do think again, just him being a big body physical receiver, he is going to last a little bit. Like I think he's still going to have 2 good years with them. Obviously, they got him at a better price. Like right now, he's probably the best receiver on the market, but they got him for a little bit because they expect a dip. But yeah, I think the 49ers have been trying to get younger, like we said with Pearsall and Stribling and stuff. It just hasn't really worked out for them. But eventually, they're going to have to get younger around Purdy because this core isn't going to last. We'll see though. They have all the talent again to possibly make a Super Bowl run, but you're banking on 3, 4, 5 players that are up there in age to continue to be real impact players, which is a tough thing. You don't know what's going to happen year to year with some of these players at these ages. Then on the same Week 14 slate, we have an 8:20 game between the Bills and the Packers. Not a matchup we get very often, but a matchup between two fan bases that you could argue are up there with the two best fan bases in all of football. I'm interested to see Jordan Love. Very interesting. I've been vocal that Jordan Love, I feel like, again, maybe a lot of people at one point, maybe before last year or the year before that, thought he could possibly be in MVP talks. I think he has all the talent out of any top quarterback in the NFL. When you look at his size, his arm strength, him being as athletic as he is, to have an MVP caliber season. It's just, I'm not necessarily sure if everything around him could elevate him in that conversation over the last couple of years. Again, we really like Josh Jacobs. They've had young receivers around him again, but nobody that's that legit alpha number one receiver. He hasn't really had that. So that's going to be interesting. The Packers are always seems like it's going to be in the mix. I'm not sure if the Packers, I feel like they're like kind of in the middle of this NFC playoff race. I don't know if I would put them with the top 3 teams, but I wouldn't put them with the last teams in the NFC either. I feel like they're always in the middle. I think Matthew Golden's obviously going to be a guy we're looking towards now with some of the departures they had in that receiver room. With Wicks, with Romeo Dobbs, is he going to be the guy that steps up as a first-round receiver? And then obviously you have Watson and others. The defense is really good. They're definitely a well-balanced team, especially in the trenches. I think they're a much better all-around team than the Bills, and I would definitely pick them at home. This is a very short line. I think this is a Josh Allen favored line for like kind of casuals. Like people see Josh Allen against the Packers, they're going to ride with Josh Allen, but I think the Packers are a better team throughout, and I could see the Packers really killing the Bills in this game. I think, again, like I said, the Packers just need to get that alpha guy on offense. I felt like last year there were times they were running it through Josh Jacobs, and then I felt like times last year their offense got kind of stagnant. I would love to see Jordan Love what he could be with a legit guy. Maybe Matthew Golden's that guy, but I love this Packers teams throughout. It's just in this NFC, it's weird because you got top teams that are the most complete teams in football with those type of playmakers on offense, and the Packers are kind of lacking that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at we just talked about the NFC West. I mean, we talked about the NFC East earlier. There's a lot of, I mean, and even in their own division, there's a lot of good teams in the NFC, and the Packers also dealt with injuries that were crushers last year. I mean, losing Micah Parsons, losing Tucker Kraft. I mean, they lost some key guys on both sides of the ball that kind of impacted their season, and Jordan Love played really well in the playoff game against the Bears, and then the Bears just lit it up and came back and eventually won the game, and I don't really put the blame on Jordan Love necessarily, but yeah, the offense didn't kind of generate anything, during the Bears comeback when they needed to, but they had some special teams issues as well. I mean, Jordan Love played well. They ended up losing the game, but yeah, Josh Jacobs has been a great signing for him. The first 2 years have been very good. You get Tucker Kraft back healthy, that helps the offense immensely. Christian Watson, when he came back, added another dimension to the team and played well. Matthew Golden had that sick touchdown, in the playoff game against the Bears, which I thought, I didn't want to declare it, but I thought that was most likely going to be the end for the Bears and the Packers were going to win, but that didn't happen. Jaden Reed was banged up for most of the year last year. So, all that, if Packers offense is healthy, I mean, they're gonna put up points, and Jordan Love, has been solid, since being the starter now. He's going into, I think this is his 4th year now as a starter already, which is crazy to say. Micah Parsons, they're not going to get back right away. He's going to still miss some time in the beginning of the year, but once you get him back, that's going to help. they're going to be a good team. They're going to be in the mix. But, just having Josh Allen, Sunday Night Football going into Lambeau. I mean, we saw it a couple years ago with Jordan Love against Patrick Mahomes and Jordan Love outdueling Mahomes. So now we're going to get to see Love against Josh Allen now at Lambeau. Crowd's going to be crazy. It's going to be cold, So that's gonna be a fun game later in the year that I'm looking forward to, with the Bills going into that environment against the Packers.
Yeah, again, like I said, I think you still talked about Jordan Love outdueling people. I think Jordan Love has it all to outduel any top quarterback, any matchup. Talked about Jaden Reed a little bit. I talked about Matthew Golden. Feel like somebody has to step up into a top receiver, into a number one receiver. And I'm not that confident it's going to be either guy because I haven't seen too much from them yet that really display that can happen. I think it's possible. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I have the Packers definitely in that matchup. Like I said, I'm not really trying to make too many predictions that early, but I like the Packers there. Then in week 17, the last game, we have Lions Bears. Lions are a team I've been very vocal about. I don't really believe in Dan Campbell much at all. I felt like he kind of rode with his coordinators, and I feel like he was just a guy that fell in the right place at the right time. I think the GM there has done a phenomenal job hitting on all these draft picks. He came in right around that time. He had two great coordinators that became head coaches. Maybe one shouldn't be a head coach, but that's another story for another day. But Lions, Bears, I think it's going to be interesting because if the Lions could get back with all the talent that they have, this could be a matchup in week 17 that could possibly decide that division. So that's why I threw it there. But at the same time, we could see something like last year where the Lions aren't there. So again, I think it's going to depend more on the Lions side. I think the Bears really are definitely going to be there. That's how much I believe in the Bears. But the Lions have so much talent. The problem with the Lions for me, they made an investment in their offensive line in the offseason, which I think they definitely needed with Jared Goff being the quarterback that he is. But for the Lions, I felt like this happened every year. And I think Jared Goff is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. But in the modern day NFL, when it comes into a playoff run, there's going to be a point in time where the pass rush is going to be heavy for the Lions. And when you have a quarterback like Jared Goff that can't move laterally, it's either going to really speed up your offense or you're just going to get a ton of pressure and not be able to handle it. That's why I feel like the Lions kind of have a cap ceiling. But again, with all the weapons that they have, with how creative they could be, I mean, with Gibbs and Amon-Ra are arguably the two best offensive weapons in the entire NFL. Jameson Williams, you could argue the best field stretcher in the NFL. Sam Laporta. They added Pacheco to replace Montgomery. Obviously, they wanted to add to that offensive line, which I think Pacheco's a good move. In like a limited role in a short downage, thumper, red zone role. It's going to be not like, again, a couple of years back with Montgomery and Gibbs where it's close 50-50. I think it's going to be like 80-20, but does take some of the pressure off. And I think the defense could be definitely better this year. Again, the Lions are another one of those teams I feel like they fall into the Chargers-Ravens boat. They could be a playoff contender. They could be a team that could possibly go very, very deep, depending on how it all pans out. Again, I just say a year for Dan Campbell. I've said it. If he doesn't make the playoffs this year, I think they definitely move on from him because his team has so much talent when it comes, especially on offense. Even on defense, we had Hutchinson and stuff too. Like they have great players all across the board. It's going to be interesting to see if they get back. Another team to see if they can get back to where they were.
Yeah, I mean, they lost some close games last year, particularly the one to Pittsburgh at home. They were right there at the end to score a potential go-ahead touchdown. It looked like they did, but then there was obviously, a flag on the play. You also had the stinker on Christmas. They lost to Max Brosmer and the Vikings. So there were some bad losses in there, some close losses that they had that maybe could have changed the tide for their season. And like Dan Campbell said, after the NFC Championship game loss to the Niners, I mean, that could have been their shot. And so far, it's kind of been proven right. Because a couple of years ago, you're the one seed, you had home field advantage, and then you lose to Jane Daniels and the Commanders. They just went up and down the field against your defense. And the defensive coordinator, like you said, is now a head coach in the NFL. So last year, you go 9-8. This year, I mean, I expect them to still, be in the mix, be a good team. Their offense still put up points last year. But yeah, I mean, you play in a tough division. Division's gotten better, and the conference is very good as a whole. So again, another team. I mean, I got to go through each team individually with the schedules because we're going to do predictions at some point. But they're going to be in the mix. And yeah, Jared Goff, good quarterback, but not somebody that is going to run around too much. He's more of the traditional pocket passer. So yeah, you got to make sure he stays upright, and hit his guys. And he's got a very good supporting cast around him. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs they gave him more of the workload last year, and he excelled. I mean, he was amazing last year, and that's going to continue in 2026. So, and someone you didn't talk about, Isaac Tesla, the third option, made some good plays last year for them as well. So, yeah, I mean, they just got a ton of weapons on that offense. The defense at times could be a little suspect, but they can make plays. They're going to be a good team. They'll be in the mix. But if they don't make the playoffs, like you said, I mean, it could spell the end for Dan Campbell uh, in Detroit.
Yeah, so that was our last game on this NFL schedule prediction. Anything you have to add for the NFL before we get into college football?
No, I mean, there's some other games that maybe we didn't get to. I know the Bills are playing the Rams this year. I mean, that was a marathon game a couple years ago. I mean, Josh Allen had 6 touchdowns in that game. I forget what the final score was, but that was a great game. Broncos Chiefs are opening up Monday night, week 1. If Mahomes is healthy, that could be an interesting game, to say the least. Just some games like that. We'll see. But also one quick thing I got to throw in. We didn't really talk about them that much, but Aaron Rodgers is back.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the Steelers. I don't know why. Big Steelers fan across from me had no Steelers games, but
We had to go to some of the other marquee games. Listen, it's not about being my fandom. We gotta give the people what they want. Talk about the big matchups.
yeah, I was a little upset Aaron Rodgers came back. I would have liked to see Drew Allen this year, but all right. We get another year of Rodgers, and that's it. So maybe we see Drew Allen next year.